It's your boy Concert Vince 34. Today is March 1st, 2018. Happy March and happy anniversary to Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. This 9-track album came out 45 years ago to today's date. It was on March 1st, 1973. It's a big album for this band. We'll talk about that in a moment. And I'll also share some of the connections I have to this album and what I really like about it. But we want to wish a happy birthday to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So why do I like this album so much, like many across the globe on all corners of the earth? Well, the first thing I like about this album is it's quick. I've said this in previous videos. I like content as far as an album to be under 50 minutes, preferably under about 45 minutes is the sweet spot for me. But if it gets to 50 minutes, I'm fine. This album is about 42 minutes and change, depending on what version you got, whether you got the bootleg with a little more delays, whether you got the real vinyl or you got the CD. But long story short, it's under 45 minutes and it tells an amazing story with both noise, silence, build-ups, lyrics. It has everything that I want in an album. It's a story with everything, and that's what I like about it. And when you compare this to The Wall, which is another amazing Pink Floyd album, what I like about this album is it tells a story just like The Wall, but this story is something I can listen to more often because it's under 45 minutes. One of the things about the 70s, a lot of great long extended albums that tell a story. They're almost like musicals or movies. You got Tommy by The Who. You got, again, The Wall. And and even you go to R&B, Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life. An amazing album, amazing tour that I went on. But I like the albums from the 70s that got to the point within 50 minutes. And this is a great example of one. I can listen to it. We don't have a lot of time as adults nowadays. And when you only have an hour to play some music, you can listen to Dark Side of the Moon chilling in the crib like I am right now. Connections. Let's talk about my emotional connections to this album. The main one is me being a runner. In every marathon I've ever run, I've only ran 2 marathons, I've had selections from Dark Side of the Moon in my playlist. And these songs were strategically placed at points in the run where I was starting to break down. Literally, my body ran out of fat to burn and I was hitting the wall, pun intended. And I listened to Pink Floyd and it got me through to the end of the race. The first race in 2014, my first marathon, I listened to the entire album front to back in the middle of the run and it got me to the end. The second one I did last year in 2017, I put more other music into my playlist, but I did have a couple songs, Us and Them, Time, and I believe I had Money as well. I think Great Gig was in there. I can't remember if it was, but I believe it may have been in there as well. But these songs emotionally connect me to those times and races where literally I was more fatigued and exhausted and broke down than any other point in my life doing physical activity. And that's my connection. There's many stories. People listen to these albums while doing certain drugs, allegedly. And they tie it to that. People tie this to their youth and being teenagers or 20-somethings and listening to this album, whether it came out when you were a teenager or many people I went to high school with in the mid-2000s were listening to this music, and the gospel of this album still rang true in the mid-2000s. So it's something that I think emotionally people have different feelings about this. Now, this is an album where people critique people or they mock people for repping it. A lot of t-shirts have been sold. I don't know how many, but I'm sure millions with as far as Dark Side of the Moon t-shirts. And it's kind of like a poser thing for some people where you wear just to be cool, just to think you're hip. You have a lot of hip-hop artists that rock different types of rock star t-shirts like the Dark Side of the Moon and Van Halen and what have you. And this is another example as far as Dark Side of the Moon of what an ignorant rapper would be like, yeah, I listen to rock, yeah, I got Pink Floyd. But still, even with that kind of popular feeling of this album, it's still an amazing album, and I feel like You can't even. There's gonna be posers for every great thing. But this, if someone's posing and really listening to this album, well, good for them. And it is what it is. So, and I thought that's a very critical thing to talk about as far as this album and the way it's perceived by diehard Pink Floyd fans and older Pink Floyd fans looking at younger kids rocking this stuff and be like, son, you know what you rocking? You know, what do you know what that is all about? And back in my day, I went to see him, and it's kind of an interesting thing there. Now, a thing I read online today with Rolling Stone is I didn't realize that the song Money on Dark Side of the Moon was influenced, as far as the time signature, was influenced by Booker T and the MGs, which yet again proves my point about how a lot of people, I always joke too, I go to the whitest concerts ever, except a couple rap shows here and there, but it shows yet again a British rock band, or just a mostly white rock band in the 70s being influenced by previous blues, by previous R&Bs and soul music of the 60s and before that the 50s. And Booker T and the MGs is an R&B group from Memphis, but they influenced the UK. And there's a lot of things about the Beatles and Floyd coming and influencing American kids, but these UK cats were influenced by mostly African Americans, but all races, in the blues of the 50s and 60s, which came out of a struggle. So one struggle birthed another struggle, and all of it is great music. So just a cool thing I read, but because originally Money was supposed to be in 4/4 time, but it was in 7/4 time when you listen to the track. And I'm sure many of the OGs of classic rock already knew that, but I didn't know that. And the more you know, and the star flies across. But anyway, I thought it was a cool thing there. So, again, as I said, Time is a song that it's the most emotionally connected song I have on this album, just because of my running. And even when I listen to it on a run, it gets me going. Even when I listen to it in the car, it brings back a great feeling. But the whole album is great. And like I said, 9 tracks, the best of the best. There's no fillers. The dead space means something in this album, which is cool. But let me know what you guys think, whether you're old, young, in the middle. What does this album mean to you? What do you like about this album? Does anyone think it's overrated? A lot of times people say it's overrated. Have you done various activities, quote unquote, with this album? I haven't, just full disclosure, haven't experimented and listened to this album at the same time yet, but that's just me. I know everyone has their different feeling, and I know people allegedly who have experienced this album in another dimension, shall we say. But man, this album is great. Shout out to my boy Roger Waters, who is still touring with this music. Shout out to all the cover bands, David Gilmour, everyone that's representing this. And really, this is also, quick side note, my boy Roger Waters, this is the first album where he really gets that lyrical lead for the entire album. So really cool moment for him and for the band. And it's one of those great moments in classic rock leadership history. You think about Phil Collins, frontman in Genesis, getting away from the drums and being headline. And you think about even Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis and pulling up to have his solo career. It's just one of those things. But great album, great time period in the 70s. And happy birthday, Dark Side of the Moon. I'm out.